In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
One of the most interesting things about your life story is that as a kid, you grew up with the Biden family there in Delaware. You knew Hunter Biden, you knew Beau Biden when you were kids. I think you went to church together. And of course, now, ironically, as things work out, now this administration, the Biden administration, is coming after your friend, your client, Roger Stone. And I wanted to play for the folks a little clip here. This is from Roger Stone's podcast. He does a show called The Stone Zone, and Tyler's a frequent guest on that program. But he tells the story here, and it's fascinating about growing up with the Biden family in Delaware. Check it out.
Tyler, let me ask you a few questions. You grew up in Delaware. You knew both Beau and Hunter Biden as a boy. And you certainly are a long-term observer of Joe Biden. Do you remember Joe Biden being raised in the synagogues of Delaware?
Oh, well, considering I went to church with him every Sunday, no, I don't seem to recall that. There's so many things that, his desegregating the charcoal pit and his civil rights crusade, which he, by the way, just totally admitted were total lies when he withdrew from the presidential campaign.
He says he was arrested in a civil rights demonstration, yet in his biography, he says he never demonstrated. This is the same man, of course.
No, his whole life is everything he's ever said about himself is a fabrication. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, he was campaigning in New Hampshire in 1987. And of course, being the arrogant blowhard and thin-skinned, just egomaniac that he is, and apparently a reporter, back when we had actual reporters and journalists, challenged him or on his academic record. And first thing he says, I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do. And then proceeds to just completely make up an academic record about himself that is just like, I mean, the man, to be able to just invent this from whole cloth and boldly say it in front of a crowd of people, not even just like, shading or slightly embellishing, making it up out of thin air, like he was in the top third of his law school class and he graduated with 3 degrees and 200 credits, whatever it was. And it's just, I mean, and then goes on in that campaign to adopt the life story of Neil Kinnock, with his ancestors in the coal mines of Pennsylvania that come up and play football, right? Literally, almost word for word from British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock. Similarly, took word for word Bobby Kennedy's speeches and gave them, and without attribution, to massive Democratic audiences too. I mean, this man is a complete grifter, a fraud, a crook. There's no two ways about it. And everything, you can't believe anything he says. I can't even believe they try to act as though there's some baseline of Biden truth. There isn't. Everything his whole life's a lie, and it always has been, and he knows it deep down, which is why he's always been.
Tyler, do you recall him teaching law as a law professor in Philadelphia?
No, he did. I believe he was an adjunct professor at Widener University School of Law, which is in Wilmington, for like constitutional law for one course. But he did not teach for 5 years as anything at Penn. He can't even get the facts straight on his lies.
Well, he was raised in the Puerto Rican community of Delaware, except for in 1970. He was elected to the Senate. There were fewer than 2,000 Puerto Rican residents of the state. Look, nothing this guy says is true. But look, you knew Beau Biden. This is the one I find most egregious. When he was with Gold Star Families about 2 weeks ago, he says he and his wife remember so distinctly seeing Beau Biden's flag-draped coffin come back from the conflict in Iraq. Am I incorrect that Beau Biden, the former Attorney General of the state of Delaware, died of brain cancer and not in any military-related action?
He died of brain cancer, glioblastoma. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I mean, there's no definitive proof that it occurred because of the burn pits that he probably encountered. I mean, as I understand it, and Roger, if you could just, I have to plug in this laptop and I could grab the, otherwise I'm going to lose this here. So just give me 1 minute.
I don't know where Lori went. Are you
no.
there, Lori? Well, you're there, Tyler.
Rick, it's good to meet you.
So nice to meet you too, finally. So any further comment on what we just watched there?
Wow. I've got a lot of stories. I certainly could, ventilate my spleen, as they say. No, I don't. It's kind of a nightmare, really, to have grown up with Joe Biden, knowing what a fool this man is. Gosh, I don't know how to describe it. What I've said about Joe Biden is Joe Biden has spent his life from an early age trying to prove wrong what he thinks people think of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that what people think of him is correct, that he's a lightweight, that he's an egomaniac, but he constantly is trying to always, it's this like competitive, almost like juvenile, I got to outdo the other guy. And that's why you get things. If you go to my one of my YouTube channels, you'll see a video when he first talked about taking his opponent out behind the gym, and beating him when he's threatened to beat up Donald Trump. I mean, this is just, it's like, Joe, you need to be back in the high school locker room. You'd have been a better football coach. This man is not fit for office. He never has been. But unfortunately, he's also, besides the BS aspect of his character and the completely just willing to spin off and say anything that needs to be said and tell anyone what they want to hear in order to get his objective. There's a lust, a cunning for power, to be the top dog, and clearly to live an opulent lifestyle, because he's never, the houses that he lives in Delaware are, believe me, it's the top tier. I mean, I think he always looked upon the DuPonts, family DuPont, and the wealthy people in Delaware, and thought that that should be me, and he figured he knew he wasn't smart enough, and didn't have what it took in terms of building a business. So he figured, hey, politics, that's the easy path. That's the way you can work you can get paid to just run around and shoot your mouth off and play games, and you're not really accountable, but every 6 years if you're a U.S. senator. It's really a dream job for someone like that. But it's a nightmare for our country and for our state.
Yeah.
It certainly was.
Yeah. I'm Canadian, so I watch U.S. politics from the north. And you're a lawyer involved in a legal system representing a client like Roger Stone, who is in the middle of this huge political storm. My question to you is what we're watching actually real? It just seems to me like we keep going through these. It's like we're watching a movie.
Theater.
It's like
yeah.
theater. Yeah. It's like we're going to go after this guy and we're going to use lawfare to attack this candidate. And Donald Trump's going to be in jail. Hillary Clinton, lock her up. And, she smashed her servers with a hammer. But nothing ever really seems to happen, with rare exceptions where it's like the average ordinary person, like the people involved in the J6 incident, might end up in jail. But with the politicians and the prominent figures, for the most part, it seems like nothing ever happens. And I think because it seems like there's never any consequence for someone like Hunter Biden with his laptop scandal, or Joe Biden. It's like people have lost confidence in the system. Is it real, or is this all a bunch of fake crap, like political theater?
I mean, I to be honest, I struggle with this all the time, because it really is demoralizing, and the fact that there is no. I've said this about Donald Trump, that if he's expecting someone to ride into the rescue, no, that's not going to happen, because we're the ones who have to rescue ourselves from the situation, because we are, in the United States at least, we have been a titular in recent years, self-governing, consensually self-governing free people. But, I think we've got this Leviathan unitary government in Washington that's grown totally out of control. It's even beyond the control of the people we elect to control it, to the extent that they can accumulate power. And, this is, I really hate to say it, but it's the ooze of the Clintons that slithered into Washington in 1992 and brought in this idea that you can't be shamed out of politics, no matter how sleazy, how exposed you are, no matter how much corruption is black and white on paper right in front of you. Oh my God, here it is. Here's you could literally serve up a confession signed by Hillary Clinton herself and filmed, videotape, and she would deny it. And they would say, no, that was, they would have some way of wiggling around it and getting around it. The death of shame, the inability to, and frankly, the co-opting and the total corruption of the media, which began, ironically, under Richard Nixon, I think, really, when it went from being reporting to we're going to get this guy. Right. And the intelligence, obviously, Operation the Mockingbird elements have, done what they needed to do. They've totally infiltrated these major media organizations, and it shows. And the problem is this is something it's a cancer that's been metastasizing over at least 50, if not 100 years. I mean, at least a century. If you look back to the sort of the growth of the technocratic, state, Woodrow Wilson, who brought in the income tax and the Federal Reserve in one fell swoop in the same year, 1913. I mean, God help us. And frankly, was at the end of his term an invalid, and his wife ran things. Familiar? The Democrats seem to like that paradigm of governance. But that being said, this has been built. This progressive technocratic police state has been sort of, it's been nipping at the heels of the Republic for the better part of 100 years. And, can we get back the Republic? Can we return to being a self-governing free people? I don't know. I mean, what can we do it without there being bloodshed, without there being a civil war, without there having to be armed conflict? I don't know. I think that maybe the technological advances allow for people to be informed, but does that mean we can communicate with each other and organize, or does it just mean that we're more closely informed about the collapse of our country and the collapse of liberty and freedom as we knew it? People are distracted so much these days. I mean, and add on the economic peril that we're all in. You look at, my God, the inflation. Just go to the grocery store. It's staggering what working families are hit with. And you see the Republican Party now. You see these role reversal where the Democrats represent the billionaires and the technocratic elites. And frankly, in a form of fascism. I mean, I kind of have to, I let them go, but I mean, a lot of my fellow patriots say, oh, these communists. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I wish they were communists. They're fascists, because communists really are just, fascists are communists with money, with a lot of wealth and backing. And it's the corporate, and Bobby Kennedy couldn't have said it better. I mean, he goes by the definition that I've gone by for at least 20 years, which you can also find at the Foundation for Economic Freedom, or Foundation for, forget the name exactly, but if you Google the term fascism, you'll see it's the merger of the state and concentrated wealth or corporate power.
Right. Yeah, and public-private partnerships with the government allowing private ownership of corporations, but the government really dictating where the production will go, or controlling those big corporations with subsidies, grants, tax breaks, regulations.
Yeah, it's absolutely hand in glove. It's like there's no way to say which, where the state begins and the corporations end, because in other words, the people who run the government are appendages of the corporation, corporate interests, the wealthy elites, and similarly, these big corporations, and we see it in tech, big tech now, are an appendage of the government. They carry out the censorship and the things that are, under our Constitution, not allowed by the government is prohibited from doing so. But they just have their so-called private partners act in this regard. And either way, I mean, whether it's communism, fascism, socialism, I've always said it's authoritarian or totalitarian statism, and that's really what it comes down to. Collectivism.
I do agree with that. Yep, totally absolutely.
Agree.
Let me ask you a question. This is maybe a little down the side road, but I want your opinion on this. We have a big populist movement growing here in Canada, and to me, the words "we the people," that's a very American thing, but it's been embraced here by the populist movement. And so when I hear that phrase, for the longest time, I've had trouble wrapping my head around its use here and in the U.S. too, by the populist movement down there. But to me, that always represented a reference to individual rights and freedoms, individual liberty. But I've come to realize, I think, that what's really happened here is it's been sort of flipped upside down by the populist movement here, so that the people embracing it are actually
authoritarian.
Well, yeah, kind of authoritarian, and they see it as a collectivist thing. It's like we the people in a collectivist sense, so that there's still it's just it hit me over the head within the last couple of weeks that to me we the people represented the United States, which always to me was about we the people as individuals working together for individual liberty, right? And individual rights and freedoms. But now it's like it's we the people as a collective. And the thing that really drove that home for me was a guy who's like a podcaster. It doesn't matter who it is, but he's Canadian. He uses we the people all over everything because he's sort of a sovereign citizen, common law advocate guy. But he starts his podcast now with this song all about communism. And I'm
I was going to say, that sounds like the dictatorship of the proletariat to me.
Yeah, wait a minute. Like we the people. Oh, you mean we the people as a collective. So can you, am I on the right track here now finally? I may be a little slow on the uptake sometimes. It's only taken me years and years to sort of clue into this. Was I like totally off track on this?
You're spot on. And it reflects the intellectual and logical incoherence of any sort of totalitarian leftist or whatever you want to call it, ideology. Their ideological underpinnings come down to just one thing: coercion. They're going to force you to do what they want you to do.
It's baked into their ideology and the system. It has to be there.
Yeah, and it's actually you've heard the phrase, "Oh, liberalism is a mental disorder," kind of thing. Well, first of all, I don't like the fact they hijacked a good word. Liberal, liber is the Latin root liber, free, to be free. Right. Liberty, for example. I mean, I'd say let's take it back. That's why I call them leftists. I don't call them liberals. They're not liberals by any stretch of the imagination, classical or otherwise. But that being said, liberalism is not a mental disorder. It's that fundamentally disordered control freaks are attracted to that ideology. Because like Joe Biden, for example, look, I can be the big guy, big shot. I can can I use profanity?
You sure can. You swear up a
Joe
storm
Biden, I can bullshit
to.
everybody, and snow job them and tell everybody what they want to hear, which is how he got elected to the United States Senate. I know a lady who's a fine, she's a liberal. Right, she's one of the people who realize that maybe we shouldn't have gun control. You can tell a true liberal from a leftist because a liberal will still maintain those values, but say, you know what, I don't think we need gun control anymore. I don't agree with that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I think it's interesting to see that it used to be almost 50-50 in the United States in terms of support for gun control measures or even outright bans of guns. And that absolutely has declined to where now I think if you took most polls indicate that well, I don't know, they're trying to brainwash the youth, with these serial mass shootings, quote unquote, even though, there's mass shootings every weekend in Chicago. You don't hear about those, right?
Well, yeah. And I think that's exactly why, if you don't mind me interrupting, I think that's why a lot of these liberals are changing their tune because they have to live in crime-ridden big cities run by Democrats. The crime is so out of control. They don't like feeling defenseless in their home or when they go out on the street, they want a firearm for self-defense. Now common sense kicks in, that self-preservation instinct kicks in because they're human, for crying out loud.
Absolutely. I mean, and here's the thing. I think that Thomas Jefferson once said that to deny a man the access to an individual access to a firearm or to a weapon would be akin to denying someone the access to a heavy coat in a cold winter. To when they go outside. I mean, it's literally that's what it's like. You're forcing someone to potentially freeze to death. I mean, it's that elemental. Yeah. It's that fundamental and basic. And here's the thing: is that they don't view. Leftist ideology, whatever totalitarian ideology. It just comes down to force. It comes down to I'm better than you. I know better than you. And this is why you see the intellectual arrogance or the egoism. And when they don't want to debate you, right? But they want to have their ready-made talking points where they can have their little tropes and tricks and their sophistry to sort of make their point. But really, what it comes down to is deceit and coercion. They'll lie to you. They will tell you anything you want to hear. As alluding to Joe Biden ran around the state. This lady I mentioned, 1972. She's a liberal because she's not a leftist. She said he would go to the she was a young anti-war activist at that time. Joe went to the anti-war crowd, said, yes, we're going to end the war in Vietnam, and went to the pro-war or the sort of more traditional crowd, said, no, we got to win this war. He would tell everybody what they wanted to hear. And that's how he barely edged out Caleb Boggs. That and basically having Frank Sheeran, who was the guy who killed Jimmy Hoffa, arrange a little strike or a little mini sort of event at the News Journal, the local newspaper, so that Caleb Boggs's major piece that was supposed to be with the paper didn't go out the weekend before the election. So
fascinating.
But that
That's
being
a story
said,
I had never heard.
Yeah, it is. It's very true because it's in actually Sheeran. His biography was written by someone who is an attorney in Delaware who's a friend of mine. Or well, not I shouldn't say he's a friend of mine, but a friend of mine. It's his stepfather, and his name is Charlie Brandt. And Charlie's a good guy. He's a good attorney, and he interviewed Sheeran extensively. And Sheeran on his deathbed said, "Oh yeah," he said, in '72, we made sure that he was a Teamster. Again, he confessed to killing Jimmy Hoffa. So this is he's saying that they helped Biden win again by creating a strike that all this because it was a razor thin margin. And Biden won by a razor thin margin. His wife and daughter were killed the next, that just like a month later in a car accident. But, even that, as I've said before, he embellished that. He lied about that. He went around the country and it did so for many years saying, my wife and daughter were killed by a guy who drank his lunch. That is the most despicable, defamatory lie I can imagine, because the man was not in the slightest, drank his lunch. He did not. He was a sober as a judge truck driver. Nelia Biden just pulled out right in front of him on Route 41, I believe. And just, he couldn't avoid it in the station wagon. And she and the baby were killed. And I guess the boys, Beau and Hunter, were in the back seat or probably in the way back, and they survived, injured. But, it's a horrifying thing. I have to say, living through something like that, it's got to be just unbelievable for anybody. And Joe Biden certainly had to live through it, and he was a wreck. He was a total mess. He was lost for the longest time after that. And look, I would think someone might gain some wisdom, might gain some, maybe be a little more circumspect out of that. He didn't. He used his wife and daughter's death for political sympathy, whatever you want to call it, wherever it was a convenient political prop for him to trot that out, the most basic, like horrifying, the drawing on people's empathy or sympathy to make political mileage for himself. And it is always, and nobody wanted to, and the thing is, he did it in a way where you could not challenge him because, oh my gosh, you can't say anything about that. Joe Biden, that's awful. How could you say that about him?
Now he does it with his son, Beau.
Mileage out of his wife's death. Yeah. And I know.
The same thing with Beau.
Do you really look? His book his book, Joe Biden came out with his book after he was vice president, after I guess Beau had died. It was called Promise Me Dad. Yeah. Beau Biden's dying wish was, you have to be president, Dad. I don't know. I don't look, Beau was very much behind his dad's run. I mean, he was very much his father's son in the sense of, well, I shouldn't say that because I think Beau was a better man than Joe Biden was, certainly. Joe was just a shanty Irish crook. I think Beau was, child of privilege, but he had integrity on some level. You know what I mean? He wasn't, I mean, it's odd. It's, you'd think Hunter Biden, Hunt Biden, look, I mean, Hunt is just, he's spun out of control. I mean, I just think he just realized, especially after Beau died, I think it was just like, that was the only backstop to his total degeneracy, was that Beau was a straight arrow, was a pretty morally upright guy. And that he had a future, and that anything Hunter did might affect that future. After he died, all bets are off. It was just like pedal to the metal, baby. Anything I want, and I don't.
And then
I question whether Beau would have
with his dead brother's wife. Remember that?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and let me tell you something. I've always felt that. I've always noticed, and I don't know what it is. I've had friends over the years. What is it with like nice guys attract the bitchiest, really cool, good guys? You know what I mean? And I'm not. This is not being. I'm sure it's probably.
It's true though.
Example of that.
A lot of truth in that.
But that being said. No, it really is. It's like the opposites of trust. I mean, I don't know. The impression I got from her was always this arrogant, looking down her nose. Kathleen Biden, Hunt's wife or ex-wife now. I liked her a lot. She was a warm lady, a very, very nice person, and certainly didn't deserve what she signed it. I don't think she had realized what she was signing up for. But she was always very, didn't play the imperious, looking down her nose at you. Whereas, Beau's wife, Hallie, was just a bitch on wheels as far as I'm concerned. And Hallie, if you're listening, you're a bitch, okay? And guess what? You're exposed. End of story. I mean, you're exactly what I thought you were all along, a degenerate grifter hanger-on. And frankly, you should have straightened him out, not taken him down the tubes with you. Anyway, so back to the show. Because who knows who watches this? I mean,
I'm curious to ask you, since you knew the boys when they were young. You're one of the few people, maybe the only person I've ever met, who actually knew Hunter Biden when he was sober. And I'm just curious to ask you, what is he like sober?
Boring, not interesting, uneducated, almost illiterate, but nice. I will say this about Hunt. He's always been not nice. I mean, I don't know how to, it's kind of one of these deals where it's like, sure, I'm sure Dr. Evil was nice to people around him or something. I shouldn't say that. No, that's not true. That's not a good analogy. No, I was always very fond of Hunter, actually, because I thought he was more personable in the sense of being real with you. Beau was very Beau would sort of keep you at arm's length, I mean, he knew they called him the senator. He was on his way to the big victory. Hunt was more down to earth, I guess, but he was also, you could tell that they were not raised by any sort of, there was no authority in the family, meaning when Amelia died, Joe was an absentee father. Valerie, I'm sure, did what she could, as well as I think Jimmy stepped in as the uncle, and did what they could. But it's kind of like there's this sort of wild child aspect where not only are they privileged, not only are they untouchable, but they're also don't have any parental supervision. So it's just a recipe for disaster, and it produces exactly what we see in Hunter Biden today. Throughout his life, which is just this big Lord Fauntleroy kind of thing. And it's not, I don't recognize, I guess, unfortunately, I always thought he was a decent enough guy, but I always knew there was a ruthlessness in terms of protecting his interests. I sensed that, and that no matter what it came down to, everybody's expendable relative to their interests, and that's where the way Joe Biden is. I've been sort of drafting a book that I might still write it. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those deals where it's like, ugh, do I expose myself to this by just, writing this book about the Bidens over the years? And I was going to title it originally Political Animal, which is what Joe Biden is. He's a political animal.
Title.
I mean, it's
Great
like
title.
almost, a feral, like it's as though everything he is driven by his everything comes down to a calculation of political survival and advantage, so it becomes predatory, like everything that would define what you think of as an animal. Joe Biden basically fits that. And I was saying basically that I was going to call, if I wrote it about everybody said, call it what you originally said when I first was working with Roger and Joe was going to run. I said Biden crime family, because like people didn't want to use that, but obviously it wasn't used until probably he began running. But I said, I don't know, it was originally going to be that, but I think political animals is what they are. And you think about the traits of an animal versus like what's I mean, we're all animals in a sense, right? It's just a question of like what are they, what makes us human versus being animals. We're human animals are things like concern for other people, like sympathy, empathy, emotional connections, and not just it's blood thirsty, cutthroat, like whatever it takes. You'll slice anybody out of the equation. You'll go to any measure to survive, claw your way to the and that's, I mean, as I said, using his wife's death and the death of his wife and daughter, which is such a horrible yet intimate thing. It just reflects someone who just has no, and then again, like you said, I said, using his son's death. How can we capitalize on this? I mean, it's mercenary. It's sinister. It's beyond mercenary, really. Like I said, it's animalistic. It's like whatever it takes to get to the prize,
But there's never been any low too low for Joe. I mean, he lied about his academic credentials. He plagiarized every speech he ever gave, I think. He lied about his own wife and child's death, lied about Beau's death. I mean, there's no low too low. He is a political animal. I think that's a perfect title for your book.
Oh, there he is. Ma, hey, buddy, ma. That's Beau Biden.
That is Beau Biden.
They always call everybody buddy. Hey, buddy, ma. And I say ma. It's like almost like the penguin. They would have this sort of way about them. Their father, he kind of looks like the penguin, from the Batman.
He kind of does.
It's that grit. It's that, or actually maybe more like the Joker, but like some kind of that grin. My father, we purchased. My parents purchased the lot next to his original house on Centerville Road, across from St. Joe's, and it was just an empty lot, and they were going to build a house there. And he came over when they were walking the property one day and started, through the fence, started talking about, you're not going to this, and you're not going to. And my father he took no shit from anybody. He was like, listen, and he said, listen, chicklets. My father was a cosmetic dentist and endodontist, and like was one of the developers of like porcelain veneers. And he just told Biden down. I mean, he's just like, look, chicklets. Because his teeth were like chiclets. I mean, they're literally these cheap caps he had on back in the day. Now, of course, Hunter's teeth look like they're made of pearls or really.
And speaking of Hunter, there is John Paul McIsaac.
Yeah. Just the first time I ever met him, like you think according to Keith Morris or Kevin Morris, excuse me, this is a Biden sugar bro, Hunter Biden sugar bro. The guy's like bankrolling him, who's behind what was it, South Park. He's like a screenwriter, I guess, an attorney out in California. He's the one that put up the $2 million to pay Hunter's tax bill. He floated this sort of what Roger called a Unabomber style mind map, that said that this guy Keith Abloh, who was a psychiatrist briefly for Hunter Biden, and Hunter left a laptop apparently at his office, that somehow that got to Roger and then got to me and then got to John Paul McIsaac. I'm like, these people are like literally, I mean, it's you realize the delusion when they create a fantasy and you're a player in it. I'm like, what? I'm like, are you out of your mind? I've never. It was just. But he's a good man. He's a very courageous man too, and had his business destroyed.
That is a true whistleblower. Yeah, John Paul McIsaac. Hey, there's RFK's campaign manager.
Good man. Let me tell you something. Story about Dennis Kucinich. First of all, I always liked him. when he was running for president. I thought he was the only truth teller and the only, really honest and, who represented what I believe is like ethical politics. But this is a cryptocurrency.
One of the few Democrats, yes, that I respect.
Yeah, exactly. And here's to show you how truly, in a sense, not a party creature or a partisan zealot he is. This is at a cryptocurrency conference in 2017 in Aspen, and which had Patrick Byrne, Ron Paul, Jesse Ventura, and I introduced myself to. I said, I've always been a fan of yours. I'm a Republican, work for Ron Paul, but I said I'm Roger Stone's attorney. He said he immediately got this like real like sudden serious expression. Now, time frame, you got to think September 2017. Trump had just got elected. He says, I need to talk to you. He said, I need to talk to Roger. And he kept like, and he was very serious about it. And eventually, I couldn't get them connected directly. I gave him the numbers, but Roger was at some thing where he couldn't tear away. And finally, we ended up having dinner together at the Brown Hotel, whatever. There's a hotel that's here in Denver. Anyway, with Jesse and Dennis and he said they're going to try to create a perjury trap for Roger. He said this is right before Roger was testifying to the Intelligence Committee, and Dennis warned him. He said you got to warn him. He said they're going to set him up and that's exactly what they did.
That is exactly what they did.
I swear to God.
The WikiLeaks.
Dennis tried to head it off. He tried to stop it, and I said, Roger, you should be, that you got to give it to Dennis Kucinich. He is a genuinely good man of integrity. He tried to warn you that they were going to, set you up to trip you up, and we're going to create this perjury trap. And he, this is like 3 weeks before he testified, and Dennis gave me little cards right here somewhere from his original run. They were like kind of like baseball cards that he was very proud of that I kept. I need to hook up with him if I can. Philadelphia. I don't have any way to get in touch with him. I don't know if you have any contact for him.
Yeah,
but that'd be great.
I can hook you up. And I'm sure, of course, Dennis will be there. What you just said, that story you just told about Dennis's integrity, that's exactly why Bobby has chosen him to manage his campaign. There aren't too many that Bobby can really trust, and he knows he can really trust Dennis Kucinich. Oh, Joe Biden himself.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
And who's the lady
that's
beside
That's
her?
my mom. That's my mother.
That's your mother. Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was when I was running for state senate and Beau was running for his first run for attorney general. That was at a union event on a Saturday morning. He was kind of surprised to see me there because I was like, why would I not come to union events? These are voters.
Beau Biden and Morgan Freeman. There's another good man right there.
Good man.
Also suffering Trump derangement syndrome, though, I hear.
Is he really?
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Who's that in the background in the middle of the shot?
It might be Chevy Chase. I'm not sure though.
No, it looks like Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
If you zoom in, you might be able to make like doing an original. What do they call it? Photo bomb?
It does. He's photo bombing you. That sounds like something Chevy would do.
Yeah. Oh, that was when I ran for state rep and just a local broadcast we did. That's my dad when I got sworn into the California bar.
Awesome.
That's return.
Yikes.
Just elected vice president. Yeah. Huh. And that's my mom again. That's of course Jill. Yeah.
This must be so surreal for you.
Oh yeah.
To be battling the Bidens in court. There's
real horrifying.
Diamond and Silk. It
Diamond
must
and
be.
Silk, yes. Yes.
It must be so strange for you, Tyler.
It is really strange at times. Yeah. It's just it's odd.
I can't even imagine.
It's just like my whole life is blown up into this, like, when I grew up, I hate to say it, it's like the world, the nation, at least living with just the disgust and like, that this president is so awful. As senator, I mean, we had to live with him for 36 years as senator.
As your senator?
Yeah. He went from being, I think, originally he was an arrogant, angry, but very quick and clever in some ways guy, to when he had the aneurysm. It went to more becoming like what's the word, eccentric, almost like, and then now senility, but none of it good.
None of it good.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.